All right, here we go. We're going. Welcome, Bernat, to Wellington, New Zealand again, to Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. As you know, it's our summer here at the moment, which means we have most of Wellington closes down for the month of January. We have very few people here, but we're all very keen to hear what you have to say about social media. So without ado, I will pass over to you. I want to just move around.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ramsey, for the invitation. And also hello to Jennifer, who are in Utah. And I hope the connection is okay. It's generally fine. I don't know what happens today. Probably my computer is just waking up, which I am too. So you'll see me using my tea. It's very early here. So first of all, I don't know if you read the Facebook sutta or what were your impressions about it. My idea was to just talk for a bit and then open up for discussion. But at anything, you just wave or you just speak, or like if you have the need to not wait until the Q&A session, please go on and speak. So I was thinking about basically why the hell did I write or try to write a sutta like canon? And I had written a blog post about Facebook. It was called A Buddhist Argument Against Facebook or something like that in English. But then I thought, why there's a part of me that still doesn't take this seriously enough? So I thought, what would happen if I write this in the language of the teacher's time? Will I take it more seriously? And it has had some effect. So my main point is that the online world, social media, is really a territory for meditative growth, spiritual practice, however you want to call it. Because I think that even if we are very digital beings, the social media is relatively new. It has less connotations, less history in us. And so we might be more tempted to think that it's less real. It has less consequences. It doesn't condition us just as much as other activities in the world. So the dissonance, for example, between our meditation practice and a gambling addiction might be much more self-evident to us than the dissonance between meditation and checking Facebook 100 times a day. So I just want to ask a question here. So how many of you, maybe someone, has had the experience on the phone of checking Gmail or Facebook or Twitter, any of these apps, just checking it, then going to the central screen again, and then checking the same app again, then checking Facebook, then checking Gmail again? Has this happened to any of you, or is this something that you've never experienced?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That feels good. I'm not alone. So the Inuit have a word for this. It's called Itsuarpok. And Itsuarpok is an Inuit word which means to repeatedly go out of the igloo to check if your visitor has arrived or not. And I think this is what we do with smartphones particularly.
Bernard, can I tell you the Swedish?
We check, is there another email yet? Yeah.
The Swedish version is, don't get your beard caught in the mailbox. Same thing as going out to check the mail every 5 minutes to see if it's arrived. Oh, we've lost him.
But now it's easier because your mailbox used to be at your door, physical door. Now it's in your pocket. So we built this technology because we want it, but we recognize that our desires are sometimes very stupid. So it's not necessarily progress, because the mind that has thought about, no, let's build this, might be a greedy mind, stupid mind, an impatient mind. Have you realized how in Netflix, when you finish watching an episode, the next one autoplays in 5 seconds? It used to be 10 seconds, now it's 5. Like with the title and the music, you can skip those 30 seconds. I don't have the patience even for those 30 seconds. So I don't want to say that we're getting like super wars, but it doesn't feel very promising. So my point is that first of all, we have to become fully conscious of our relationship, if it is, because it really is like a gambling addiction for the reward center of the brain and everything. But we just don't know. So the first step is always being mindful of it. And you can just try to see how many times when you check Facebook, you find anything of interest. I tried this and it was very few times. You can put there's an app which just counts the time that you check Facebook or the cell phone in general. So that might be interesting. My second point with that Facebook sutta was that social media is probably the modern equivalent text is called sensuality. So teachings that disguise or criticize sensuality, they have like a moralistic ringtone for us. Like, it sounds Puritan. We don't the sensual world. But I think that now we need it again, but not in terms of sex or anything like that, but in terms of the online world, which is the closest thing probably. And there's this notion in the text of the appropriate posture for meditators, Satipatthana, which you will be probably familiar with. Is just the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And this idea, I think, is very useful when thinking about social media. And this idea of having mindfulness at the sense door. And today, especially the sense door of sight, screens, but then also of hearing, the sense of hearing, notifications. So just to see how different it is to be constantly going off to town, to your cell phone or whatever, but then in meditation try to always be coming back. Aren't we pulling into different directions? That's my question. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you fine. I turned the video off to try and improve the bandwidth connection.
Okay, that's fine. So I think that these things encourage reactivity, they encourage greed and aversion. And what I said in the commentary of my Facebook sutta is that even though, of course, what I can find on Facebook or Twitter might be practical and beneficial, and maybe it helps, it improves my life, or maybe it encourages me to improve the world, mostly it just entertains me. So that my relationship is one of just filling time. I check Facebook or my cell phone every time I want to just fill in time. The bus is 10 minutes. I have to do something. It's those times exactly like in meditation when it seems like it's not interesting enough, there's nothing to do, so my mind wanders off. And then I notice that and I bring it back. And somehow I consider it the same thing with cell phones. They provide me the technology for going off and staying there for quite a while until I realize that I have to come back. Or maybe I never realize that I have to come back because I check my cell phone until the bus arrives, and then I get on the bus and then I check my cell phone again. There was this TED talk. I'm sure that you're familiar with TED Talks about a comedian called Will Stevens that made a parody of TED Talks. And for 5 minutes or something, he said absolutely nothing. He gave a TED Talk with no context. Glasses to look smart. He was moving and changing the tone of his voice. And he did the usual trajectory of a TED Talk, beginning with a personal anecdote and then building up to some point, and then at the end coming down, trying to some kind of a conclusion or an epiphany at the end without really saying anything. And I think he was spot on that I can watch 5 TED Talks in one afternoon that are supposed to change my life. 5. I don't have time to change my life in between them. So it encourages this just reactive act or a TED Talk that will change my life or something I want to buy, whatever. And probably it does not translate into a wise action, which it could. It just stays in that momentary greed that keeps me hooked to the smartphone. Or it's some article about the last political outrage and I just action in the world to make the world a better place. So it does not translate into compassion. It just entertains me with anger for 5-10 minutes and then I go on to the next thing because there's too much of this content. So it's really an extension of our minds and a very agitated and scattered mind that is all the time wandering off and we're not bringing it back. There's no culture in the internet. Well, maybe there is, but generally the culture in Twitter or Facebook is not about think about your arguments, straighten up your facts, check the facts. It's just pure emotion. It's pure fires of greed, hatred, and confusion. So you can find similarities between what in Buddhism is called the 3 fires. And greed is quite evident, so is aversion. But the last one, which is ignorance, confusion, delusion, it takes the form of the structure itself of these platforms, which filter reality, and they just show you what you want to see. And this is quite messed up, in fact, because in the end, you cannot access the criterion by which they filter reality, You don't know what they're living out. And we've seen the effect of social media with Trump, Brexit. We're seeing it in Catalonia now with the political divide of independence or not independence. How two Facebook news feeds from two different people can be totally different. And so it's like they're looking at a different reality. There's actually fashionable now to have all these articles about how Facebook and social media is dividing us, radicalizing us, making us dumber. How YouTube, for example, because it wants your attention, it just shows you ever increasing intense versions of whatever you're watching. So it can target people with a tendency to racism, for example, with incipient racism, and the algorithms of Facebook and YouTube can detect that and start showing you and feeding you slightly racist content, and a month later, more intense content, because these algorithms have no ethical compass. They just want your attention, and they know that if they show you a more intense version of whatever you're consuming, you will give it your attention. And that's why we need to train attention so much and understand how it works and how this affective or hedonic tone of any experience, the pleasure of it or the displeasure of it, it hooks us. So what do we do then? And I'm finishing now, and I want to see what you think. What do we do? Well, one option is the equivalent of asceticism. We could call it digital asceticism. It's I erase my Facebook profile, Twitter, whatever. I go back to a non-smart phone, and that's it. But that would be a version of asceticism. It's an option, but you can do is you can try it for a while, and so you can have like a retreat, like a digital detox, where you establish a weekend every now and then where you don't check this, or a week where you don't check this, and you see the effect. And then just as maybe every day you commit to sitting 20, 30 minutes, so you have a space in your day in which you are, and then you bring it back. You can have a period in your day where you don't check your smartphone, where you don't log into Facebook. And you have to decide this in advance when you're not under its spell. And so you do the same that with meditation. You have retreat time and you have time in the world in which you still are very, very careful of the usage you do of smartphones and social media. And you watch and your mind of the things that pull your mind off. I'd very much like to hear your thoughts and discuss anything that's come up for you.
But I've got a question. So I think you really hit on something in the way. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Sorry, I'm Duncan. I'm really interested in this idea that of the ever incremental novelty. So we're made in such a way we're always just seeking that new thing, and then we habituate to it. And so social media knows about that. And as you say, it graduates us to something novel, a little bit more extreme, a little bit more extreme, a little bit more extreme. So in that context, the digital detox has the power potentially to reset us back to a sort of a more normalized point. But I think the problem is that that doesn't recalibrate the algorithms. So the algorithms are still up here showing this ever-increasing novel stuff. We habituate ourselves back down, but Google doesn't know that, Facebook doesn't know that, Instagram doesn't know that. And so, an interesting idea. How can we? Can we get a button? You know, I don't know. How does that work? How do we rehabituate the algorithms back to where we are, so that we aren't immediately pulled up to it?
And that's a very, very interesting question. There are ways, I think, to clear your filter bubbles. There are technologies that do that. I don't know how effective they are. Some people claim that they're not very effective. But you can kind of burst the filter bubble of certain things. For example, in Facebook, you can decide that Facebook shows you the latest stuff instead of the stuff that Facebook considers more relevant to you. So you can do little things if you really dig into the preferences of these apps. You can really do something. But if it doesn't exist, then we might have to create the technology that resets this algorithm, if it's possible. But I wasn't thinking of a digital detox as trying to achieve that, but rather helping us to see that this is happening and therefore unhook from it. Unhook is actually a possible translation of the term nirvana. So that you know what's going on. And since you know that the content that is going to be shown to you is more and more extreme, it's like you see the sign that comes with it. Hey, I know that that's the algorithm showing me this and that. So you might start using it less. You might start searching for alternatives. And there are some alternatives. There are some people developing other types of social media, but they have very, very few users, really. But if that's what people ask for, this might take off. So you just realize that this is what's going on. And so you can have the space to ask, okay, do I go here? Do I check this video or this content because I really think it might be interesting? Or is this just my mind wanting another injection of rage or desire or entertainment because I want to be numb because, I don't know, I have a lot going on in my life and I just don't want to think about it. And these platforms are just helping me do this. But is this what I really need? Is this what I really want? Is this coherent with my meditation practice? I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
Bernard, hi, I'm Derek.
Hi, Derek.
Hello. It's summer here, so Wellington is 4 seasons in one day. Summer means right now it's raining. It's kind of a...
There you go. Yeah, it's raining up there.
But it is raining. This afternoon it was hot. Right now
I see.
it's warm but raining. Thank you for your unpacking of the sutra and bringing in some of the other teachings in a way that kind of opens out this whole kind of issue really fruitfully, I think. And I wanted to just describe two things that occurred to me as I was listening to your talk, which are two ways I've been working with this matter. One of them is one of the basic training precepts is the one of avoid alcohol, or it's often expanded in a more fruitful way to say take care to avoid substances that cloud the mind, or things of that sort. And here the key thing is avoiding clouding the mind, which certainly Facebook, and maybe your sutra could have been the Google sutra. It has the same effect. You know, it's a time waster, it's a distractor, it's next and next and next to keep monkey mind chattering. So I noticed myself using the technology, you know, turning on in the browser things that will cut out the ads, for example, but also finding ways of noticing how this thing doesn't serve me, and kind of restricting my diet of it. For Facebook, the only thing I really want to do, like a lot of people, is I'm not remotely interested in their version of news. I'm even less interested in fake news. I don't care about that. I'm really only interested in posts by family and friends. So I've been careful not to say yes to people that I don't know well enough to be interested in their posts. And as I learn more about Facebook's very deliberate design to addict us, you know, their whole tweaking of the algorithm is all about producing the effect that you describe, then I look at ways of noticing how that works on me and reducing my intake of it, so I respond less to unhelpful posts by family and friends. I don't like them anymore. I might notice them, but I stopped liking them and I stopped feeding them by posting back. So very briefly, the other example that I thought of was 18 months ago in the run-up to the American elections. I was following this, and I had maybe a dozen newsletter feeds from Washington Post and so on. A whole lot of feeds, which were popping up in my inbox every day. And after Trump was elected, and he has cultivated the spectacle of outrage, it took me 6 to 9 months to slowly unsubscribe from most of those. I fell into a much more intense version of obsessively following these feeds, even though all it did was generate my rage and upset. It took me a while to kind of unsubscribe, disconnect myself from almost all of those feeds, which no longer served any useful purpose for me, but which I got addicted to. So I just wanted to tell that story too.
Yes, thank you. I think, yes, I think that the point is not necessarily to go into this digital asceticism that I was saying. It's totally a viable option. I think that it's the same thing with thought. So the aim of meditation is not to have no thought, although you try not to think purposefully while you're doing it. So if thoughts come up, you accept that, you don't feed them, you come back to the breath. You don't get upset because they exist. You just acknowledge their presence, but you don't follow them. So the equivalent of that in the digital world, in Facebook, in Google, or I could have called this the Sutra, Google Sutra. I don't know. It's really similar thing. So that moment is like right before clicking a link. You have the information, and then you have to choose if you follow that or not. I'm not saying you don't have to follow it. I'm saying what is most consistent with your meditation practice is that you don't do this compulsively, but that you ask the same question that you might ask in meditation. There are styles of meditation in which you may follow certain thoughts if you realize that they're beneficial, and that you need to think about them. Maybe in meditation, you need to think about whether you're getting tensed up or not. For a while and check. And that's part of thinking activity, to evaluate how your meditation is going and seeing if you maybe need more openness, more groundedness in the body, or you need to just focus on one object because you need this groundedness, or that you're quite calm and maybe you can open up and just follow the mind wherever it goes. You can think in meditation and you can click on links, but you have to see with what kind of mind you follow those links. Do you click on the link because of a greedy mind, an angry mind, a confused mind, or do you click there from a generous mind, compassionate mind, wise mind? And it's very good that you brought up the fifth precept. There are a couple of articles on Tricycle and other Buddhist magazines about how social media is, could be included in the fifth precept. So in the Pali Canon, the fifth precept is explicitly about a dream. In Pali, it says Suraya Meraya Majapamalatana, and the first two words are liquors in the Buddha's day. But then it says Pamalatana is that which creates carelessness or negligence. It depends on the translation. So anything that makes the opposite of sharpening the mind, clearing the mind. It's clouding the mind is the problem. So Facebook can be included here, and maybe one beer can not be included because it doesn't cloud your mind. Provided you can have only one, of course.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernat. Should we just take one last question to anybody? Or observation?
Of course.
Hi, Bernat. I'm Lindley. Thank you. It's a fascinating talk. I just had a question about the use of Facebook that's compassionate towards others. You've been talking about our own experience of Facebook, how it affects us, other social media platforms as well. But I've been thinking recently, if I like someone's posts, am I encouraging them to cling to this idea of constant feedback, to become obsessed with Facebook? Am I being kind by trying to support somebody by liking a post that I know that's important to them, or am I damaging them in a way by encouraging their own addiction to Facebook? What's the sort of skillful way you use it?
The sound is breaking up a little bit.
Okay, I'll say that again. So rather than thinking about my...
Yeah. Can you sum up your question and speak a little slowlier, because I think it's easier on the sound.
Sure. How do you feel about how our own use of social media platforms like Facebook affects others? How do you look at that in a Buddhist context? Are we being compassionate towards others by increasing their own clinging, by encouraging them by liking their posts, by encouraging their own engagement, their own addiction, potentially? Makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't comment on the likes. That's a huge addiction to get confirmation. Probably you can think about what you share, and you can think as much as you can, because you can never know for sure what the effect of something on other people. But to the best of your abilities, you can discern if what you're sharing is something that might be beneficial for others. In the same way that you try to discern if you are sharing it out of greed, aversion, and confusion, you think, might this feed these three forms of reactivity, or is it something that might help to calm them down? This is one thing. Then you can just share less and really share only that which you find valuable, and not share reactively constantly just because. Otherwise, you're just creating noise. There's too much content. We don't have time to assimilate. That's the problem. That's what I said about the TED Talks that can change your life. That you can change your life 5 times in an afternoon. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, Jennifer, do you have any questions for Bernat? Jennifer's in Utah, in the United States.
Hi, I'm okay. Thank you all so much. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be here as a fly on the wall. I'll turn on my camera. Hopefully it won't overload anything. I guess if I could make a comment, something that I considered is that there might also be positive ways to interact with Facebook. I completely agree with everything you've said. Facebook has addictive properties. It can cause reactivity. It creates bubbles. It keeps people in bubbles. But that said, one thing I try to do with Facebook, and I don't always succeed, is when I read something that triggers some sort of emotional reaction in me, like anger, for example, is I use that as a practice moment to stop, let myself feel the emotion, and then decide the best way to react or not react, depending. So, I'm just kind of wondering if there might be a spot for Facebook to be used as a practice tool, even though it's got all these negative characteristics.
Yes, totally. Actually, I think that the problems with Facebook perhaps needed more attention than the positive things of Facebook. These are not so much the problem, although if you only focus on the negative, you might give the image that it's worse than it is. That's why I said that we don't need digital asceticism. My point with writing the Facebook Sutta, the point to myself actually, was to really make it explicit that that was an opportunity for practice. So that it's not different from the real world. It is the real world. And it is as dangerous and as wonderful and full of opportunities as the real world. And so we should be just as cautious as in the real world. But we have to, I think, address it specifically, explicitly, because it's a huge part of our real world. It's a huge part of our daily lives. And we have to be explicit about it. And since I was explicit about it, now I'm more aware of these issues. And I can even, we can all perhaps make the exercise of, for a week, 2 weeks, or something like that, make our practice specifically social media. Both in what we do not react to, but also what we do. So as you said, if you take that as a practice opportunity. Of course, first you become aware of how you react to whatever you've posted and whether you need to follow up or not. And then, as the previous question said, to think about if you share it or not, so that you might have a compassionate action through Facebook in the world. So it's not like this is bad and we just have to get off this. There's just more discernment.
Thank you, Bernat. Thank you again from New Zealand, and I'm sure Jennifer can offer her own thanks. I think it's time for you to...
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Bernard. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye from the US. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. So I hope that you had a good session, and thanks for inviting me, Ramsey.
It's a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you again at some point, both virtually and hopefully at some point in person. So thank you very much.
That'd be difficult, but I'd love to.
Yeah. Well, if we knew anybody who was an impresario and who can put you on as the pianist, we'd find a way of doing it.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, and good morning and good night from New Zealand.